life you're living right now wasn't just random? What if, before your first breath, a choice was made, not by your mind, not by your parents, but by your soul? This isn't just a poetic metaphor. It's a truth whispered by ancient traditions, near-death experiences, and spiritual memory recoveries. Before you entered this world, there was a moment, a still point in the infinite, where your soul stood at the edge of existence and chose this life, not out of punishment, not out of force, but out of a deep, almost unexplainable purpose. See, most people think birth is the beginning, but from the soul's perspective, it's just one chapter in a much larger journey. A journey across dimensions, across forms, across lessons that cannot be learned in one lifetime alone. And in that hidden space before birth, you weren't alone. You were surrounded by guides, energies, and the echoes of past choices. You reviewed not only what you had been, but what you still needed to become. Somewhere in that liminal realm, you saw options. Not just who you might be, but who your parents would be, The wounds you might carry, the love you might find, the darkness you would face, the light you might finally remember. And then you chose. You chose the pain. You chose the challenge. You even chose to forget that you ever made the choice. Why? Because remembering too early would disrupt the lesson. It's like knowing the answers to a test before you take it. It nullifies the purpose, so you stepped into the unknown, into the matrix of form, of identity, of forgetting. And here you are now, listening, wondering, and maybe, just maybe, beginning to remember. Because the truth is, this life, with all its chaos, its suffering, its mystery, wasn't an accident. It was crafted by you, by the eternal you. The you behind the name, the story, the ego, the real you who never really left the other side. To understand the choice before birth, we must first explore what happens after death, because death isn't the end. It's a transition, a shift in frequency, And what happens in that space between lives is far more structured, intelligent, and sacred than we've been taught. The Tibetans call it the Bardo, a realm between worlds, a dimension that exists between the falling away of one life and the beginning of the next. But the Bardo isn't just one place. It's a sequence, a multi-layered experience that unfolds based on your soul's level of awareness and karmic imprint. For some, the Bardo is a blissful release. For others, it's terrifying, not because of punishment, but because you're faced with the undeniable truth of your inner self. The first phase is often called the Bardo of dying, a moment of separation from the physical body. The soul lives light as thought, but still deeply tethered to emotional attachments, regrets, and unfinished loops. Time starts to unravel. Memories flicker. Everything you've ever run from begins to approach. And then the next phase, the luminous Bardo. Here, the soul is met with pure awareness, a radiant field of light, truth, and potential. It's said that in this space, you're shown your original nature, not your personality, not your trauma. Cute, but your true self, unfiltered, eternal, divine. It's overwhelming, and most souls recoil. They turn away, because the light reveals too much. It strips away illusions. Without preparation, the ego cannot survive that brightness. So the soul begins to fall, not downward, but inward, back into identification, back into separation. And thus, the next stage begins the karmic Bardo of becoming God. This is the realm where the next incarnation is magnetized, drawn by karma, desire, and unresolved soul contracts. Here, the soul reviews possibilities, begins to feel drawn toward certain parents, places, and lives. And what happens next is the choice. But that's the mystery, Even the choice is influenced, not by force, but by what you haven't yet healed. There is a moment between lifetimes where everything you've ever known, everything you've ever been, falls away. Your name, your story, your body, even your beliefs, all gone. And what's left is light, but not ordinary light. This is the luminous Bardo, a realm of pure awareness, a state of consciousness so expansive, so brilliant, so true that it doesn't just show you who you are, it shows you what you've always been. This is the place you came from, dimension before dimensions, the space before time, source before dot. And in this place, your soul is offered a rare opportunity, liberation, because here in this radiant field of being, there is no karma, no weight, no fear. It's just infinite potential. You are no longer the observer. You are the observation itself. You don't see the light, you become it. But here's the paradox. Most souls don't stay. Why? Because this kind of purity, this level of truth, is too much for the parts of us still clinging to identity. The soul recognizes the light, but it also remembers its attachments, its guilt, its desires, its regrets, its unfinished business on earth. And in that flash of cosmic awareness, where you could let go and dissolve into eternity, the pull of what's left undone becomes stronger than the pull of liberation. So the soul turns away, just slightly, just enough to fall again, not as punishment, but because the soul still has work to do, still has people to meet, lessons to learn, love to give, pain to process, patterns to break. And so the light begins to dim. Not because the light fades, but because the soul begins to forget. You forget the brilliance. You forget your origin. You forget that you are the very thing you're searching for. And this forgetting is part of the design, because only through forgetting can we experience the illusion of separation. And only through separation can we find our way back. This is the sacred game of existence, to be born again, not knowing you chose this, to live a life that slowly brings you back to the truth you started with. So, if you've ever felt a strange ache in your soul, a longing for something you can't describe, a homesickness for a place you've never seen, that's the memory of the luminous Bardo, still flickering in your consciousness like a dream you almost remembered. Call from the other side of the veil, reminding you, you were once free, and you can be again. But to return to that light, you must first walk through the shadows you left behind. You might wonder if the light is real. If liberation is possible, then why don't more souls choose it? Why do so many return again and again to lives filled with struggle, loss, limitation? The answer is not simple, but it begins with one truth. Freedom requires readiness. In the luminous Bardo, every soul is offered a glimpse of pure, being a chance to dissolve back into source, to escape the wheel of birth and death. But here's the thing, the light doesn't force itself upon you. It invites you. An invitation requires acceptance. Most souls aren't ready, not because they're bad, not because they're weak, but because they're still attached. Attached to the idea of being someone, attached to their past pain, attached to those they couldn't save, attached to dreams they left incomplete, attached to identity itself. And identity, even when it hurts, is seductive. The ego whispers, just one more life, one more chance to love again, to get it right, to finally prove you're enough. And so, the soul says yes, but not to the light. It says yes to form, to experience, to another round in the great classroom of earth. But with that, yes, comes forgetting. The soul must enter through a narrow gate, a birth canal of amnesia, 'cause to fully experience the lesson, you must forget the test is even happening. This is the great irony. You chose this life, but you agreed to forget you ever made the choice. And yet, buried deep within that forgetting is a spark, a whisper, a haunting sense that this life means something more, that you're not just reacting to random chaos, that you're not just here to survive, suffer, and die. You're here to remember. But remembering takes courage, 'cause the path back to the light isn't a straight line. It's a spiral. It's one that descends before it rises. It's one that will shatter every illusion you cling to. That's why most souls don't escape the cycle. Not because they can't, but because part of them still doesn't want to. Because freedom means surrendering control. And surrender is the most terrifying thing the ego can face. But sooner or later, every soul comes to a turning point where the pain of staying asleep becomes greater than the fear of waking up. And that's when something shifts. A memory returns. A flicker of the light you once turned away from. And you begin to walk, not blindly, but deliberately, toward wholeness, toward truth, toward home. Once the soul turns away from the luminous light, it doesn't fall into darkness. It falls into attraction. Not conscious attraction, but karmic magnetism. This is the karmic bardo of becoming, where everything you've done, felt, feared, and desired begins to echo back to you. Not as punishment, but as gravity. Your unresolved emotions become momentum. Your soul's patterns, unfinished lessons, and silent vows all form an invisible field around you. Field that starts pulling you toward the next incarnation. And this is where choice returns. But it's not a free choice. It's a conditioned choice. You don't just pick any life. You're drawn to certain people, places, and possibilities because of the energetic residue you carry. If you lived in fear, you'll be pulled toward environments that mirror that fear. If you lived with guilt, you may seek a life that offers forgiveness or punishment. If you hurt others, you might choose a life where you feel what they felt. Not because the universe is cruel, but because the soul wants balance. Karma isn't retribution, it's resonance. It's your energy field seeking harmony with itself. So the soul begins to scan, not with eyes, but with vibration. You begin to sense the lives available to you. Not all, the ones that match your current frequency. And in that space, you begin to choose. You see the parents who carry your DNA. You feel their emotions, their struggles, their story. You glimpse the childhood you'll have, the pains you'll inherit, the society you'll enter, the body you'll wear. But you also feel the lessons, the potential to grow, to shift something old, to break a cycle. And here's the most astonishing part. You often choose the harder path, not because you enjoy suffering, but because your soul knows what it needs. It chooses the mother who may abandon you because that abandonment will awaken your inner strength. It chooses the father who may never understand you because that rejection will teach you self-worth. It chooses the illness, the poverty, the heartbreak, because somewhere in the pain lies the key to your power. But you don't walk into it blindly. Before descending into form, you review your soul agreements. You meet with your guides, your soul family. Okay? You plan your entry with care. And then you accept the veil of forgetting. The veil that ensures you won't remember any of this until the time is right. You won't remember why you chose your parents, why you feel drawn to certain people, why certain events haunt you like deja vu, until you're ready, until life cracks you open, until you begin asking deeper questions. And the veil slowly begins to lift. That's when the karmic pull becomes an awakening pull. You begin to move, not just by unconscious energy, but by conscious intention. And that is the beginning of freedom. You didn't land in your family by accident. Your soul chose them, not for comfort, not for ease, but because of what they would awaken in you. This is one of the hardest truths to accept, that the people who hurt us might also be the ones who help us grow the most. Before birth, your soul scans not just the physical bodies of your potential parents, but their energy, their lineage, their wounds, and even the karma they carry. Because your incarnation isn't isolated, it's woven into a web of interconnected healing. Your mother's suppressed voice, your father's buried grief, your grandparents' inherited trauma. These aren't just their burdens. They become part of your curriculum. Why? Because healing doesn't happen in separation. It happens through generations. And sometimes, a soul is strong enough, wise enough, to come into a family line, not to repeat the pattern, but but to finally break it. That soul is often called the cycle breaker, the black sheep, the misfit, the one who never fit in, the one who questioned everything, the one who felt like an alien in their own home. That might be you. If it is, know this: you're not broken. You're just awake. You chose these parents, not because they would give you everything, okay? But because they would withhold just enough to make you search for what's real. You chose their love and their absence, their attention and their rejection, because all of it would shape you, refine you, break open the layers that cover your soul's purpose. And it goes even deeper. You didn't just choose your family, you chose the time you'd be born into, the culture, the language, the body, the gender, the environment, because all of it forms the raw material of your experience. And your soul, the eternal architect, knew what kind of pressure it would take to turn you into light. Some souls need softness, some need fire. You may have needed storms. You may have chosen a life of early struggle because you knew what it would awaken in you. And sometimes you chose these people. It's not just for what they do to you, but for what you would do for them. Because in choosing your parents, you also offered them a chance, a mirror, a light in the dark they didn't know they were carrying. And maybe they couldn't meet you. Maybe they couldn't see you. But your presence shifted something in them, even if they never said it. Your very being became part of their path, just as they became part of yours. There are no wasted connections, only souls playing out a sacred choreography that none of us can fully see until we step back beyond the veil. Long before you met them in this life, you knew them, the ones who changed you, the ones who broke you, the ones who healed you, that person who walked into your life and instantly felt familiar, that connection so deep it didn't make sense. That pull you couldn't explain. They weren't strangers. They were echoes from before this lifetime. Because in the space between incarnations in the Karmic Bardo, we don't just choose our family, choose our soulmates, our contracts, our co-creators in the dance of awakening. These are the ones we've circled with through lifetimes, playing different roles, wearing different faces: parent, child, lover, enemy, teacher, stranger, each time returning not for comfort, but for completion. You and they made agreements, some to love, some to trigger, some to abandon, some to return, just long enough to open an old wound so you could finally heal it. And not all soulmates are romantic. Some are brief encounters that redirect your entire path. Others stay for years, teaching through both intimacy and pain. But the thread that runs through them all is this: recognition. That feeling, deep, primal, undeniable, that says, I know you. It's more than memory. It's energy, a frequency your soul responds to. And when these soul contracts activate, they stir something ancient within you, a purpose, a test, a portal to transformation. But not every soulmate is meant to stay. Some are here to ignite something and then leave. And that leaving, no matter how painful, is part of the sacred design. Because soul contracts aren't about possession. They're about evolution. Sometimes, a soulmate's role is to awaken your power by breaking your heart, to push you toward your truth by refusing to validate your illusion. And yes, there are those rare ones, the ones your soul has danced with for eons, who stay, who walk beside you, not as a crutch, but as a mirror, reflecting your light, challenging your shadow, helping you remember who you are. These are not just love stories. They are soul stories, and even the painful ones, especially the painful ones, are sacred, because behind every contract is a deeper agreement to help each other grow, find the light again, to return, not just to each other, but to the truth beyond form. So when someone enters your life and shakes your entire being, ask yourself, what did our souls agree to? What am I being called to heal, release, or remember? Because even now, you are not meeting people by chance, okay? Are meeting them by design. by agreements written in realms your conscious mind cannot see, but your soul has never forgotten. The moment you were born, you forgot everything. The soul's memories, the cosmic blueprint, the reasons you chose this life, all of it, veiled. Not by accident, but by design, because Earth is a realm of forgetting and of remembering. The forgetting isn't punishment. It's the sacred setup for a journey that only makes sense in reverse. You chose this amnesia. You chose to be reborn into a life that would test your soul's resilience. You knew the pain that might come. You knew how heavy it would feel to be cut off from the source. And still, you said, yes. Why? 'Cause remembrance is meaningless unless it's earned. Wisdom isn't inherited, it's lived, okay? And you didn't want borrowed light, me. You wanted to become the light. So, in that moment of rebirth, you made one final sacred agreement. I will forget who I am, so that I may remember it through experience and awaken to the divine within. That's why you were drawn to this path, why synchronicities started appearing, why you feel something deeper calling you even now, because your soul never forgot, only your mind did, and now the veil is thinning. Every challenge, every inexplicable longing, it was all part of the breadcrumb trail you left for yourself. Not to trap you in confusion, but to guide you home. And home is not a place. It's a state of being each time you forgive someone who hurt you. Each time you follow your intuition. Each time you act from love instead of fear. You pull back the veil. You reclaim what you've agreed to forget. And in that process, you awaken, that you begin to realize that this life wasn't random. It was a carefully chosen curriculum, crafted by your soul, delivered by the universe, unfolding one moment at a time. So, the question is no longer, why did this happen to me? It becomes, what part of me asked for this experience, and what am I meant to remember now? 'Cause you are remembering, not just who you are, but who you've always been. In the moment of rebirth, sent behind you. It's happening now. Every day you choose awareness over autopilot. Every day you choose healing over hiding. Every day you remember that your life has meaning. That's your rebirth, and is only just beginning. By now, something inside you has shifted. You're not just listening with your ears. You're feeling this with your soul, because this isn't just information, it's activation. Your soul didn't come here to survive. It came to remember, to embody, and to create. And now, you are beginning to remember your mission. Not a job, title, not a career path, but a sacred frequency only you can express. Your soul came to Earth to be a transmitter of light in a world conditioned to fear the dark, to turn pain into power, to turn memory into mastery, to alchemize everything you've lived through into wisdom that heals others. That's your real mission. You didn't come here to be perfect. You came to be whole, and now, as you walk through your life, you begin to see that every moment, every relationship, every setback was a part of your soul's coded curriculum. You were never behind. You were never off track. You were always in training, and now the training is over. It's time to remember who you are, okay? And live as the version of you that already remembers. Because when you do, you collapse timelines. You shift your vibration. You align with the future that was always trying to find you. You're not waiting for a sign. You are the sign. So breathe deep. Feel the power that's returning to you. And say to yourself, not from the mind, but from the knowing within, I remember who I am. I remember why I came. I remember what I chose. And now I choose again. This is your time, not to become something new, but to return to what you've always been, a soul on mission, a light in the dark, a being who chose this life with full knowledge of its sacred purpose. Welcome back.